My goals, to first, let's talk about why Matrix. So what's the reason that brought you here? And there's a couple of reasons why customers come to Matrix. One, if you're overwhelmed with personal tasks, meetings, and emails, simply you have too many things on your plate, and you finding that you're actually not working on the things that are actually driving your actual productivity, your most efficient and effective task. You don't know what your team priorities are, and you wish you had a better sense of what's going on across your team members and what your managers or your direct reports are working on. Or three, if you feel like your organization is not aligned on what's most important and urgent. And so those are the burning questions that I see over and over again when customers come looking for a way to better prioritize their tasks. My goals for today, a guide to the basics of Matrix. First, help you understand how Matrix works, and then also the philosophy behind Matrix, and then help you become more effective and efficient at prioritizing tasks, projects, and emails. I think email management is one of the top reasons why customers come to Matrix, and so I'll help you get a sense of how how you can become better at turning those emails into tasks and both to delegate them or set reminders and due dates on those important emails. And then help you envision what your work and life success may look like with Matrix. And then importantly, learn 20% of the features that will give you 80% of the benefits. I think, Matrix has a lot of capabilities, but at the same time, you don't need to know all of it. I think you just need to focus on the features that will help you focus on your key tasks. A couple of tips and tricks on how to prioritize better, and then hopefully you walk away feeling productive and have a strategy on how to be aligned with your team. Matrix is a comprehensive email priority and project management software. And we help at three different levels. At the individual level, which I would say is the most important, we help you prioritize your tasks and emails. One of the things that's really sort of at the backbone of what Matrix is ensuring that your most important tasks are surfaced to the very top. And what happens is that if you have a very good sense of what you should be working on, then it can actually help you communicate that to the rest of your team. And therefore, it actually helps your team stay aligned on the key projects. And then lastly, if you use Matrix over a long period of time, we're talking about months, quarters, and years, Matrix actually build what's called a single source of truth. So then everyone knows exactly what everyone else is working on. And then not only that, you're able to help others take over tasks, or if you need to reassign priorities, or if you need to actually give someone context on a task that's been, work in progress at your organization. What makes Matrix better than other solution? It's the only software that's Microsoft 365 certified for Outlook, Teams, and web at the same time. We're deeply integrated into the Microsoft ecosystem, so you don't have to use, Microsoft Teams or Outlook or Microsoft Suite in general to use Matrix. But if you do, then Matrix is almost a no-brainer. Matrix also provide what I call people-centric collaboration. I think, so many software focuses on the project, right? Essentially, you have a project and the task in it, but yet at the same time, when we do something, when we work on something, we tend to collaborate with other people, and we can tend to work on it for somebody else. So for our manager or direct reports or clients or customer, whatever it is. So Matrix actually helps you flip everything around, able to see the tasks you have to do for those specific individuals. It's available as a SaaS software, which is what I'll show you today. But also, if you're in healthcare and life sciences, we have a HIPAA compliant version. And then if you're state and local government, we also have an Azure government cloud solution. And then, of course, a managed private deployment option. Matrix offer one place where everyone within your team can go to know what needs to be done. And I think that I can't emphasize how powerful that is, that if you use Matrix correctly, and whether it is you're a small business or a large enterprise, you have one central place where everyone can see the priorities of everyone else. And that's so powerful and useful from a transparency standpoint. I also want to emphasize that it's very easy to get started with Matrix. I hope, that when you learn about Matrix, you don't get scared of all the features that's there. Instead, you look at it and realize, okay, how can I put this into practice today? And that's my goal. I want to make sure that when you walk away from today's webinar, you're able to go and get started by creating a project and actually starting to manage your priorities immediately. Let's start with the philosophy behind Matrix. So there's a famous quote attributed to former President Eisenhower: "What is important is seldom urgent, and what is urgent is seldom important." Now, what I really like about this quote is that it helps us put things into perspective. Let me give you an example. Let's say I ask every single one of you, what are the 15 things you have to do, right? What are the things that's top of mind for you task-wise? Write down those tasks. My next question is, if you were to start on something, which one would you start on? Do you start at the top of the list or the bottom of the list, right? Or somewhere random in the middle? And then if you have to add to that list, do you add it to the top of the list or the bottom of the list? What tends to happen to a lot of us is that we end up working on things that's top of mind. And what I mean by that is that it's that last email in, that's the first email that you're thinking about to respond to. Or, you're in your office and someone knocks on your door to ask you something, and that's the person you respond to. So what happens is that the things that are urgent tend to overtake the things that are truly important. And we don't actually get enough time to think about the tasks that are truly impactful. So instead of having a task list, what we do is we actually apply what's called the Eisenhower Matrix. It's a simple, powerful time management framework, and we take the tasks that we have and categorize into 4 buckets, right? Based on the dimensions of importance and urgency. So going back to those 15 things that you have, that simple exercise is go through every single one of them and ask, is this task important and is it urgent? And that's it. You just put into the 4 buckets. And then from there, now you have a better sense of where you should focus your time, regardless of its urgency and regardless of whether it's top of mind. So when you work on things and when you use Matrix, that's the one thing to keep in the back of your mind, which is to be conscious of the things that are actually pulling your attention away from the most crucial work. And instead, you should always be focusing on the things that are truly important and urgent at any moment in time. So applying the Eisenhower Matrix, you take those tasks and you put it into these 4 buckets. Quadrant 1, those are the important and urgent tasks. That's what you do now. That's where you focus your time. Quadrant 2, those are important but not urgent. That's what you start planning for, right? If you have excess bandwidth, if you're done with the tasks that you have at hand and you're thinking about your day or your week or your month, that's where you focus your attention next, the quadrant 2. And then the stuff that are urgent but not important, can you delegate that out to somebody else? Can someone else do a better job of that than you? And then lastly, instead of having anything that's not important and urgent, you use what's called the inbox, and that's where you have your catch-all. So everything goes into your catch-all, and then from there, you put it into these other buckets. And Matrix is as simple as that. It is essentially making it a very visual way for you to prioritize your task. So imagine this exercise. You take those 15 things that I've asked you to think about, you put into these 4 buckets. Now you go to your manager and you ask them to do the same thing. You go to your direct reports and you ask them to do the same thing. You go to your customers, your clients, and you ask them to do the same thing. And what's really interesting is when you start comparing notes, right? Imagine you're able to list out your priorities and then you go to your manager and they look at it and it's like, wait a minute, I thought this was more important or I thought this was not important. And those are the conversations where you should be focusing your time on. The vast majority of organizations agree at a broad level on the things they have to do. Where the disagreement comes from is what are the things you need to do first. So keep that in mind as you use Matrix. It's very, very simple. It's not complex here. We're not talking about, something that can intelligently figure out what you need to spend your time on, but it's a way to communicate your priorities to others, and it's a way to communicate for others to communicate their priorities to you. So being able to see what your clients to consider as important and urgent is extremely powerful, and it helps you work on the right things. So the 4 quadrants Eisenhower Matrix create alignment because it forces you to prioritize from the beginning. I would even go as far as arguing, that half the work is in deciding what buckets it goes in. And it's so much better to do the right things than to do the wrong things right. So, the worst thing you can do is to work on something that is no longer relevant or is not important within the broader picture. And success from using Matrix isn't about finding what everyone agrees on. It's discovering disagreement on what should be a priority when it isn't. A couple of tips to shortcut your success. If you're a manager, then when you use Matrix, create a matrix for your team and staff meetings. It's actually a very, very simple exercise. All you have to do is create a matrix of your team priorities, put down what you think are the most important priorities and who's the responsible party, and then project that on the screen. And when you have a meeting, you're going to be able to hone in exactly on what everyone should be working on, and you're going to get there much, much more efficiently because you're not going to waste your time talking about things that you either agree on already or things that aren't important. If you happen to be a manager and you have you're overlooking multiple sites, so for example, multiple manufacturing plants, then create a matrix for every single one of those sites. The way it works in Matrix is you don't have to be scared about creating multiple matrices. You create a matrix for anything that deserves its own set of priorities, right? And if there's ever conflicting priorities, then you know that those are distinct matrices. If you're following some specific training programs or initiative, Matrix lets you build these really cool repetitive templates, and it'll save you a lot of time and effort. If you're a business owner, so for example, let's say you run a construction business or a roofing business, and you have multiple people reporting to you across different functions, operations, sales, customer service, create a project for each of those departments, and then you're going to have complete visibility on what everyone's working on. And so as a small business owner, Matrix gives you really, really good visibility on what everyone's working on, and you don't have to have meetings with them. You don't have to be, breathing over them to know exactly what they're working on. Instead, Matrix gives you that full visibility at your convenience. And then if you're an individual contributor, create a project for your goals. And one of the ultimate thing about your individual contribution work is making sure that you work on something that's relevant to everybody else. And so if you create a matrix of your goals, and then whenever you have a meeting with your manager and you show your manager, by the way, these are my tasks, right? And I've prioritized them this way. Do you agree? It's a very, very simple question. But what happens is that you get to the core of the situation real fast when you're able to make it concrete like that. And then also for everybody, one of the things that I use Matrix for is to create my annual goals. So for example, with 2025 coming up, you have all these things that you want to do. How do you actually ensure that you work on them and not forget them? So I'll show you that as well. I do want to mention that the webinar like this one are recorded and then posted on our website, affluence.com/webinars. We also have it in other languages. So if you need those, please reach out to our team. All right, with that, let's jump into Party Matrix and walk you through the basics of the product, and let's put this into practice. So now I'm going to open up my Party Matrix. And so as you can see here, this is my sample Party Matrix, my demo account. On the left-hand side, these are my projects. So when I talk about project, sometimes people get confused and people think projects are, like a construction project or you're a project manager. And the answer is no, it doesn't have to be that way. In Party Matrix, we call it projects, but it could be many different things. There's 3 types of projects, however. The first is what's called transient. Transient means it has a start and an end. So as an example, let's just say if you're building out a store, right? A storefront, you have a start, a date, and you have an end date. And ideally, you have a series of tasks, and then at the end of it, you finish it and that project is completed. The second is what's called persistent. Persistent are things that keep on going. So for example, at our company, we have a project for our web application. It's a project that's been going on for years, and the number of tasks just build on forever, right? We have new features we want to do, and literally there are thousands of tasks, unfinished as well as finished, and so many in progress as well. And so the persistent projects at your organization might be something around process improvement or team meetings or whatever it is, and it keeps on building upon itself, and that's okay. Party Matrix works for that as well. And then the third type of project is what's called recurring. So in this case, let's just say you have a 30, 60, 90-day plan as a manager. Every single quarter, you create a plan from that. And then with that, you have your monthly goals and quarterly goals. That's an example of a recurring one. Or you might have an onboarding process for new customers. So let's say you have an enterprise customer and there are 15 things you have to do for the enterprise customer. Every time you onboard an enterprise customer, that's a recurring project, right? And so Party Matrix allows you to build templates for those recurring projects. So on my left-hand side here, I have a few dozen projects. And then when I select a project, I have the matrix. So that's front and center whenever you select a project. You can see I have the quadrants: due now, due later, not important, and then inbox. And so that's the simple structure that I have. So when I create a task, I can choose what quadrant it goes in. So for example, I'm going to say follow up with webinar participants. So that's obviously a task that I have to do after this webinar. But I'm going to go ahead and say due tomorrow 2 p.m. and press enter. So now what I've just done is I've actually just created a task in Matrix. And when I select this task, it opens what's called the item details. Now, the task actually understands the language that I put in here. So we use what's called natural language. And when I say due tomorrow 2 p.m., it actually sets the due date to tomorrow 2 p.m. my local time. So whatever your local time is, Matrix will set the time for that. So I could have said due in 2 weeks, due tomorrow, due in 2 hours, whatever it is, and Matrix will process that and set the due date for me. Within the item itself, there's a couple things I can do. If it's a very important task, I can star it. So if I have one task, then of course starring it doesn't matter. But if I have 15 tasks, starring it puts this task to the top of each of the respective quadrants. I can also give it an icon. So one thing that I like here is I like to use the red, yellow, and green. That's just as a way to say something's on schedule, something's not. Or you can actually choose one of these other visualization to say something's related to travel, to email, to making a phone call, etc. So as an example here, I'll just choose green icon. And then there's something called owner. So in Matrix, there's always someone who owns a task. Now, of course, if you have a personal task, then you're the owner. But I can easily click on this and delegate it to another person. So now that person is an owner of this task and I'm a follower. So what that means is I get progress updates on this particular task. So if you're a manager, that's very straightforward, right? You create a series of tasks, you assign it to your various team members, and then you're a follower on that task and you'll get notifications. If you're a business owner, you might have all these different folks who are actually working on various things within the organization. You can create tasks assigned to all those other people and you know exactly when they're done, when they're updated. Beyond that, you have the due dates and the reminders. Now, one thing I want to emphasize is the difference between due dates and reminders. Here, I said due tomorrow at 2 p.m. So great, that due date will come. Now, think about this for a second. Imagine your own workflow. How many times have you have tasks with due dates and then you miss that task? Here's the reason. When you have it on a due date, you don't really think about it because you're busy with whatever you're working on today. And then when that due date comes, you start to think about it. But then the moment that due date passes, and if you didn't get that done, you're going to start to forget about it, right? This is the exact same reason why people have New Year resolution and then never get it done. That's because, initially they think about it and then afterwards they immediately forget about it. So the same thing happens to all our tasks, no matter its importance. And so for me, I always like to set a due dates, but then what I do is I would go down here and I would say, remind me daily. So now what happens is Matrix will send me a daily reminder to make sure I work on this task. I easily can type remind me weekly, remind me monthly, or I can say remind everyone daily, remind everyone weekly. And in that case, it reminds everyone who's in this task. Now, the reason why the reminder system works so well is because it tricks your brain, because we tend to work on things that are urgent, right? That's the thing that sort of pulls our attention away. And so by setting these recurring reminders, it actually pulls the task back up to the top. When you're working in Matrix, you'll see those recurring reminders, and then you get to those tasks. And then not only that, if you didn't finish that task, those recurring reminders will keep triggering until you get it done. So when I create a task, I follow up with the customer or something like that, I would actually go ahead and set due in 1 month and then remind me monthly. I strongly encourage you to use these features. So if we talk about, the 20% of the features in Matrix that gives 80% of the value, setting that due date and setting the reminders will make a huge difference to your workflow. Down here, I have the chat section, which is where I can communicate with my coworkers, my teammates. You can actually have full conversations around the various tasks. It's one central place to have a conversation within context of that task. Also, it serves as a history and record keeping of everything. So as you can see, if I change an icon, I add a star, I change a due date, all of that is kept here as a record for you. So it's very, very useful, especially if you are working a highly critical task, and you want to make sure that people know the history of those changes. And what's really neat about this is you can see that this history says today, right? This is a task that was just today. But imagine if you have a task that spans months or years, you can actually pull in a new person and they can look at the chat history and see all the changes that's happened and all the decisions that were ever made for this particular task. In the notes section, you can actually add basic notes. You can also add subtasks. For example, I can say subtask 1, subtask 2, right? Subtask 3. And then as I mark these subtasks as done, for example, Party Matrix will update the progress for me from 0% to 33%, 66%, etc. Then finally, you have the resources section, which is where you can actually upload files, documents, emails. You can also link Party Matrix items together with each other. You can also mention other people here or link items to build dependencies. So the resources section is a very rich section depending on your specific workflow, but you can actually have everything come together into one central place. So whoever is responsible for this task will have access to whatever is that they need to actually get that task done on time. So now let's switch gear a little bit and talk about what happens when you have an email that you want to prioritize. So Party Matrix has really deep integrations with Microsoft Outlook. So let me give you an example. Let's say here I'm in Outlook and I get an email and I want to prioritize that task. Okay, well, I see this email. I can click on this button here, apps, and then I choose Party Matrix turn emails into task. And I choose prioritize email. And now if this email is very important and I flag it, the only problem I have is if I have 50 flagged emails, right? Then it's very difficult for me to stay on top of it. Or if I want to set a due date on this email, and then if I want to set a reminder on this email, and if I want to prioritize this email. So it's not just about flagging an email, it's making sure that I know how this email fits within the larger context of my work. So when I choose turn emails into tasks, it opens up Party Matrix here. I can actually change the item name as needed. I can choose what project it goes in. So when we talk about all the different projects, maybe this is related to a certain client. So now I click on that client, or maybe it's related to some team priorities, right, that I have. And so I'm going to go ahead and choose my team goals here. And then I can choose what quadrant it goes in. And then I can assign this email to another person and a due date too. So from one view, I can actually capture this email as a task, delegate it, prioritize it, set a due date, all in one pass. And then not only that, I can say remind everyone weekly. And now suddenly I have a reminder to answer this email. So if you have an external email and it's very, very important and you want to make sure that the right team members are working on it, this is an extremely powerful way. But for me personally, I get emails all the time. For example, I have an email from Apple that I have to handle within 45 days. Well, guess what? If I just flag it, I'm not going to remember. And so for me, actually what I do is I turn that email into a task and then I set the weekly reminders as a way to ensure that it's top of mind for me so I'll never forget it. Now, when you assign an email to somebody, it actually uploads it into the resources section as well. And so when that person opens their email, they can actually go to the resources section, open up that email and respond to it as needed. And so you can see how it says here, email file has been uploaded and that your team members can open it, or you yourself can open it, even if you're on another computer. The other thing you can do with Party Matrix is able to attach emails to an existing task. So let's just say you have, an external party sends you an email and it's relevant to an existing task that you have. So what you can do again, you can open Party Matrix. Instead of choosing prioritize email, you choose open Party Matrix. And now from this view, you can actually attach the email to an existing Party Matrix task. And so you see how I can go here and hover over whatever task I find and attach that email to that existing task. So Party Matrix allows you to have all this information organized in one central place. Now, one thing for me is actually I read my emails on my phone all the time. So sometimes I actually have a very hard time, I don't open Outlook, I use Apple Mail. So in Party Matrix, I have what's called the secret inbox address. So when I go back to Party Matrix here, I can go to my inbox and then there's a secret inbox address. So you can click on that and you can copy this email address here. In Party Matrix, in any email program, you can actually create a contact called inbox with that email. And what I can do is if I'm on my phone on Apple Mail and I get an email that's important, I just click forward and then I type inbox. And then not only that, in the body of the email here, I can actually say, due in 3 days, remind me daily. And I can click send. And what happens is that this will get sent into Matrix. It will actually create a task from this email that I forwarded. It will set a due date in 3 days, and it will send me a daily reminder to work on this email. So regardless of what email platform you use, Gmail or any other email program, Matrix will let you do that. So let's go back to Matrix for a second here. There's a couple of things I want to show you now, which is switching to team priorities. So when you have team priorities in Matrix, one of the things that is very helpful is giving everyone visibility on what everyone's priorities are. So the way it works in Matrix is it's permission control based on the project level. So here in my project called Team Priorities, when I select that project, it opens what's called the project details. In the project details, I can choose what members belongs in this project. So if you manage a team of 5, you go in here, create this project, and then add your 5 team members. Now, when they open up Matrix, they can go to this page and see exactly what everyone's priorities are. In fact, what I've done too is I've changed the quadrant names here. Instead of do now, I changed to high priority. Instead of plan, I changed to medium priority. Instead of delegate, I changed to low priority, and then I have catch all. So Matrix gives me infinite customizations within the quadrant names themselves. So I can change it to the way I want to work. So my recommendation to you, create a project called My Team Priorities with this particular format, and then invite all your coworkers. Then if you're a manager, start creating the priorities within your team and put them in the appropriate quadrants, right? And when you do something like that, when you have a team meeting, just project this on the screen and everyone can see what's going on. Now, one thing that's really neat about this particular with Matrix is that you can link to other projects. So as an example, let's just say someone in my team is managing the sales lead. Well, guess what? I can go to the sales lead project and I can actually link that sales lead project as a task inside Matrix. So as you can see here, in Matrix quadrants itself, I can see that the sales lead project has so many tasks in quadrant 1, 2, and then how many tasks are overdue. And I can actually jump to that sales lead project by clicking on this button right here. So then when I'm having a meeting, I can actually drill down to those specific tasks really, really quickly. So as you can see, I can drill down to that, and then I can go back to my team priority project and then talk about the next task as needed. So the way you build that dependencies is you simply go to a project, right? Go to the project details, copy link to project, and then when you go back to Matrix, you just simply create that new task. And then you select that task, and then you click on the link here, and you paste the link. And the moment you do that, Matrix automatically inherits that entire project into this task. And so you're able to build all sorts of dependencies, or you can also create this dashboard that you can see the status of all your tasks. So if you're a business owner, create this to manage all of your departments, right? All your sales guys, all your marketing people in one central place. And you go to here and see how many tasks are overdue, who's responsible for what, and then what are the number of tasks in each of the quadrants. Matrix also gives you these other views too. So we talk about the quadrants all the time, but you can go to the list view. The list view shows you all the tasks in Matrix, but it lets you sort them sort of like an Excel sheet, very, very easy to work with. And then you have what's called the Kanban view. This actually shows you the tasks that are in progress, the tasks that are still left to do, and then the tasks that are done. So as an example, let's just say, you have a particular initiative that you're working on, and there's a lot of people, a lot of activities, and you just want to know, hey, how many tasks have been done, and what are the things that we still have to do? And so when you go to this view, Matrix automatically aggregate all that information for you in one central place. But what's really neat here is that you can click on filter and then choose a person, and Matrix will actually show you the same view, but only for that particular individual. And so if you're a manager, this gives you so much visibility on who's responsible for what else do they have to do, or if you just want to filter for yourself, so then you can see what are the things you have to do within the broader picture. And then I can actually go to the calendar view, see all my tasks. but now anything that has a due date will show up here, and I can click on all of these tasks. I can work on them. I can edit them as needed. I can actually drag and drop directly from here too to change the due date. And Matrix actually keep a record of all of those changes for me. And then I can go to the timeline view. So the timeline view is a way for me to see things across longer horizons. So let me give you an example. If you're working on things that takes a week or 2 weeks or whatever, the calendar view is great. But if you're planning a construction project that spans across 3 years, you can't use a calendar. So the Gantt chart allows you to actually see all those tasks, but on a larger context, right? So from 2024 to 2025, 26, 27, 28, etc. And then lastly, you have what's called the reports view, which is where you can actually see the status of all of the things across all of the people. And Matrix builds you these nice fancy charts that shows you the burn down diagrams of all the work that's been done. But what's nice about this is all of this is done for you automatically in the background. So the vast majority of you may not use these features, but when you do need it one day, you need to build your performance review reports. You can actually go into Matrix, go to the appropriate view, and find that information to build your performance review. So let me talk through about how to create a project, since we talk about all these projects. You click on projects here and you choose create project. When you create a project, you have a couple of options. The first is what's called a blank project. If I click on blank project, literally it will have nothing, right? I can choose the project name, and then I can choose a basic template. So for example, a basic Matrix, the Eisenhower Matrix, or something like a SWOT analysis, if you're familiar with that. And then I can choose a color. So, color theme here. Now, the color themes actually doesn't affect anything inside Matrix functionality-wise, but it's a visualization. So you may want to have certain categories of projects be one color and other types of projects be another color. That's totally up to you. So that's an example of a blank project. But then I can also choose what's called public templates. So these are projects that, these are templates that I have that Matrix shared, and I can access it for free here. So we actually have more than 1,000 templates that you can use, and these are a few dozens that you can use right away from here, such as a 30, 60, 90-day plan. But you can also build your own templates. So I explained how, let's just say if you have a repetitive workflow, right? Within that workflow, you might have a client onboarding project, and you have these sort of 15 tasks that happens over and over again. So when you go to my templates here, you can actually save that and then launch the onboarding project, and you just say the start date, and Matrix will automatically set all those due dates for you. So what that means is, day 1, you got to do this. Day 5, you got to do this. Day 10, you got to do this. And Matrix will actually generate all those for you. And then lastly, I can create what's called from AI. So our system will build a series of tasks for you once you type in a goal here. And then you can also import from CSV. So we actually have a really nice export to CSV and import to CSV mode. So for those of you who really love working in Excel, you can export your entire Matrix into a CSV file, open it, edit it, change the due date, and then import it back. Now, the history won't be there for every single item, but if you need to create a brand new project, it's a very, very powerful way to automate your process. I see that someone raised your hand. Go ahead and send your question in the chat, and I'd be happy to answer that real soon. So now that's how you create a project. One thing I want to emphasize is don't be scared to create projects. So here in my demo account, I have a few dozens, but in my work account, I have several hundred, more than 300 projects, and that's okay. The reason is that Matrix has very good global views. So I showed you the view on a per project basis, but now I have what's called global view. So for example, I can go to the global calendar here. This will show me the calendar across all of my projects. But once I'm here, I can choose project and I can select specific projects that I want to see the calendar for. So maybe there's 3 or 4 projects that's relevant to me, and that's how I can actually narrow down and select specific projects. In fact, I can even filter it further and generate a calendar just for me, right? Or to see the calendar for my coworker. So I can select a coworker here and then see just the tasks that she has across all the Matrix. So even though I have a lot of tasks across so many different projects, I have all these ways of pulling up all that data and rolling it up in one central place for me to work on. And then in fact, I can even see all the tasks that I finished or all the tasks that have not been finished, etc. So that's an example of the calendar view. And then there's something called the search view, which is, we used to call it the master view because it gives you complete overview across all of your party matrix. When you go here, it shows you every single task you have access to. And then you want to know, what are the things I have to work on? You click on my items and it shows you all the tasks you have to work on. And then you can sort it just like an Excel sheet again. What are the things that are overdue? What are the things that are modified? And if you click on this filter here, you can build additional filter. But here's a cool thing. Let's just say if I want to find all the tasks assigned to Eugenia, and then I'm going to say find all the tasks related to Eugenia, but then all the tasks that she's finished, and then I want to group it by projects. So now you can see how in the filter section, I've just built a report of all the things she's finished across all the Perta matrix. And then not only that, I can click on this multi-selection here, select all items, and then build an email report. And when I do that, Perta matrix will build a nice email report for me and I can send it to somebody else. So if you're working with clients and you're working with external parties and you need to send them a report of all the tasks that you finished for them, that's all you got to do. You go to the master view, do generate the filters, whatever it is that you need, and generate that email report, and Perta matrix builds this out and I can send it to somebody pretty much within seconds. So that's something that's extremely powerful. But here's another thing. What if Eugenia is on leave, right? And I need someone else to take over her job. I can actually click on filters again and now find unfinished items. And now these are all the things that she has that's on her plate. Again, I can select specific items. I can select some items here, or I can select all items, and then I change owner. And now with one series of actions, I can actually assign all the open tasks that Eugenia has to another person. And here's the cool part. The next person who takes over the job will have full context on all the priorities that Eugenia had, right? And that's the power of Party Matrix. That is the reason why you use Party Matrix, and that's the reason why organizations use Party Matrix, which is it's not about everyone having their own sticky notes. It's not about everyone having their own piece of paper with the quadrants. It's about having all that in one central place and then be able to take all that information and dispersing it to everyone as needed. And so being able to reprioritize in bulk or being able to reassign all these tasks in bulk is one of the things that makes Parta Matrix so unique and powerful. So this multi-select here gives you so much power in terms of being able to reassign tasks as needed. And then, of course, you have the Gantt chart view as well. So now you can actually see how tasks are playing out over the next 4 years, right, across all of your Parta matrix. And then you can filter this as needed. Then you can download this or print this or put it into your presentation. So if you're a project manager and you just want to go and create a real quick Gantt chart to communicate to your stakeholders the progress that you're in, Parta matrix will let you do that very, very quickly. I'm going to switch gear and talk about what's called Microsoft Teams integrations. So if you use Microsoft Teams, Parta Matrix actually integrate extremely deeply. So if you go to apps here, you can install Parta Matrix on the left-hand side, then you pin it. Now you can access the entire Parta Matrix inside Microsoft Teams, and you don't even have to open, our web application. But the other thing is Parta Matrix also integrate very deeply across the other components in Teams too. For example, you might be chatting with a coworker, right? Let's say you and your manager are having a conversation and you talk about certain tasks. You can just hover over that conversation, click on this, and choose Create PM Item. And Parta Matrix let me turn any conversation into a task. And so that allows me to really quickly capture all these conversations that you have. I mean, I know how painful it is if you're coming up with a bunch of ideas and now you have to capture it and you have to leave Teams. Go find the software application you use, find a project, create a task, delegate it, prioritize it, right? That's going to take you a good 2 minutes to do. Instead, you should click on the conversation, create the task. It automatically captures information, automatically assign it. You can actually assign it to another person as needed. You can choose what project, what quadrant, and then Parta Matrix links back to Microsoft Teams to that moment you had that conversation as well. Very powerful. And of course, you can see here, I can actually send what's called action cards into my conversation with coworkers. And that to do that, I simply go down here and choose Protomatrix and send the actual task itself. That's a great way to escalate, which is actually pretty helpful. Sometimes you assign someone a task, they don't see it in Protomatrix. You go to Microsoft Teams, you send that action card, and they'll see it. And then you can actually go to what's called the one-on-one view. So if you work with a lot of people and you have a lot of projects and you have a lot of tasks, you go to Microsoft Teams, go to the one-on-one view, and you can see all the tasks you have in common with that person across all of your Protomatrix. So if you're a manager and you have 5 or 10 direct reports and you want to know, or you have your one-on-one meeting and you want to know, hey, what are the things we're working on? What are the things that's overdue? What are you blocked by? How can I best help you? You simply open the one-on-one view with that person and you can see all the tasks you have in common with that person. And then as you're having your meeting and you realize, hey, by the way, we should do this other thing as well, you click on add share task and you create the task directly from this view. It automatically assigned to your other person, and then automatically adds you as a follower. So then you'll get updates when it's modified. And then again, in the task name, you can use our natural language to set the due dates, right? Do X, by Y day or whatever it is inside the task name here, and Protomatrix will capture that, and you can choose what project it goes in. It defaults to what's called the inbox, which is your catch-all, right? Just that's where tasks that do not belong in specific projects would go. And then from the inbox, you can always move it to another project, but of course you can change it right here. To add the one-on-one view, you click on this plus right here, choose Protomatrix, and then choose the one-on-one view. So if you work with a lot of people, try this out. It's really, really neat. And that's what I call people-centric. It's not about projects, it's about people. And so you can do that for every single one of your coworkers. Now, once you install Protomatrix in Teams, there's also the Protomatrix chat bots. And so this is one of the ways in which we send you those notifications. So we talk about due dates. We talk about, reminders and people delegating you tasks. This chatbot right here tells you those progress. But also with the chatbot, you can say, what do I need to work on today? And our chatbot will actually interpret that message you ask and will give you a response to tell you what are the things that you have to work on, what are the things that's overdue, etc. And so this is just an intelligent way to communicate with the system. But the most important usage here is it tells you what are the things that require your attention. Now go back to Protomatrix real quick, and I want to show you that you can access the entire Protomatrix application inside your Outlook as well. So we build what's called a universal app. So if you have Outlook, you can click on more apps here, add Protomatrix, and now you can see everything within Outlook, again, without having to leave Teams. But if you use Mac or Windows, you can actually download our desktop application. So if you really want to go deep into Protomatrix, I strongly recommend that you install our desktop application, because then you can actually have the app pin onto your desktop, and then you'll get notifications directly within that app. So you simply go to affluence.com/downloads to get there. Okay, with that, I'm going to go ahead and go back to my presentation here. So if you do nothing else, make sure you sign up for Protomatrix, and then make sure you use our apps and Teams and Outlook if applicable. Create a project to highlight your top priorities. Make sure you set due dates and reminders. Ask each of your coworkers to do the same. That I think is very, very helpful. Just having everyone have their priorities, and then just have a conversation around it, right? Even if you're not into every aspect of Protomatrix, the quadrants view is an extremely powerful way to communicate. It's so clear because it forces you to make decisions, and that's what everyone tends to shy away from. Everyone tends to say, oh, we know what our priorities are. Great, let's put it on paper. Let's see if we agree. And that's the magic of Protomatrix. And then just sit down and compare Protomatrix every single week. Whenever you meet with your manager, even if they don't use Protomatrix, just show them your priorities. And if you work with your team, if they don't use Protomatrix, project your priorities onto the screen so then they know. And over time, as you expand usage of Protomatrix, then you have better visibility on everyone's priorities. And I think you'll find that to be very, very valuable. Some advice: use Protomatrix to track high impact tasks first. And so when I say high impact tasks, it's about tracking things that matter, right? And it's a very simple thing to do. If you're thinking about your goals, if you're thinking about what it is you need to do this quarter, this month, to fulfill those goals, those are the kind of tasks you want to track in Party Matrix. Use Party Matrix as a communication tool. I emphasize that over and over again. It's a way to help everyone be on the same page. It's a way to make things explicit. It's a way to be transparent with each other. At the end of the day, it's just a tool. How you use it is up to you. But my recommendation is to use that Eisenhower Matrix to make sure that you create that alignment. One thing I didn't go into is how to actually use it to manage your individual goals. With the new year coming up, my advice: create a project called my 2025 New Year resolution, right? And then in there, create the tasks that you need to do or the things you want to do, and then set a recurring reminder. That's how you overcome, how overcome not fulfilling those goals. Guarantee you, 90% of the people create those goals and they forget. And it's not because we want to forget it, but it's because we have so many things to do. So set those recurring reminders. And so one thing I do, I create long-term goals, short-term goals, and then I say, remind me monthly. On a monthly basis, Party Matrix sends me that reminder. I see it, and immediately I'm like, oh, yes, that's what I wanted to do. And then that's how I re-trigger myself to work on those important things. Always set due dates and recurring reminders on your most important tasks. And then this last thing is, so easy to do. If you just dedicate 1 hour every single week reviewing your Party Matrix, at least, Monday morning or Friday afternoon, whatever it is, just do that. So then you have a sense of what's happening in your time, with your time. Again, I want to say deciding what to work on is far more important than just spending time working on the wrong things. It's better just to step back. What success should look like on a personal level: you're checking Party Matrix every week to remind yourself of your goals. You have one central place to track priorities. At the team level, everyone on the team understands and are aligned on key tasks. Important emails are prioritized and triaged to the proper teams, and then be able to see everyone's priorities in real time asynchronously. Now, I'll be happy to take any questions. So if you send them in the chat here, I'll be happy to go through them. All right, so there's a lot of questions here. So let me go through these questions. So in terms of licenses, yes. So everyone who is actually using Party Matrix does need to have a license. We have many different licensing options, especially if you're a small team or if you're getting enterprise license, we have many different options there. So if you reach out to us, we'd be happy to walk you through the different types of licenses option that we have. Show examples on how we use this tool. Well, hopefully you saw some of the ways that you can use the tool for, but I think the things that I want to emphasize that you should do is, one, create a team project, right? That's an easy one, just to help everyone be on the same page. Then create a project for your own goals, right? Your own task. That's for the thing that you would share with your manager. And then create your initiatives for 2025 or whatever it is. Someone who owns multiple companies with Party Matrix. Now, that's a great question. So there's a couple of ways. So you can, if you want to manage everything from one email address, then that's very simple. Create different projects for each of those companies that you work with. And then you can actually create different dashboard projects. So you saw how I showed that you can have a project, and within that project, you have a task, but that task itself leads to another project. Well, that's no big deal. Create 3 projects for 3 different companies that you own, like 3 businesses that you own. Within each of those projects, you might want to link it to other projects that you work on. And now you just go to those 3 top projects to see the status of everything. So Party Matrix is infinitely flexible. And the way I describe it is like a fractal, right? Which means it helps prioritize things at the lowest level, which is on the ground floor. And then it helps you prioritize the things that are on the 1,000 foot, 10,000 foot, and then 50,000 foot. So when you're managing Party Matrix for multiple companies, it's no different. All you're doing is you're creating multiple 50,000 foot views. And then when you saw how I went to the Gantt charts and also the timeline view or the search view, I can actually select and filter specific projects. So then when you're working and you're like, you know what, I need to see the status of all the things for company A. Well, that's very easy. You can actually tag projects too. So you can say all these projects are related to company A, these other projects are company B. If you have any more questions on that, feel free to reach out to us. Yes, this webinar is recorded, and so I'll be sharing the recording with you afterwards. And so, but also you can go to affluence.com/webinars for any of the other recordings as well. And we actually have other deep dives into prioritizing emails or also creating templates, etc. Regarding integration with Azure DevOps, yes, we actually do. And actually, it seems like one of our coworkers already sent you a link there on how to access the connectors with Azure DevOps. But you can actually pull in tasks from Azure DevOps from To-Do as well. And so if you want to watch this webinar, again, this recording should be available to you after this presentation. Well, we take some time to process it, but then you'll be able to see it. But then you can always go and watch one of our other recordings as well. With respect to dependencies, one of the things you can do in Matrix is actually, I'll show you here on how to do dependencies. But the way it works is when you have a task in Matrix, for example, let's just say I have a task here. I go to the resources section, and then I can click on link existing item. And then you can choose another item within this project. And then you can choose, does this item is blocked by, or does this item blocks, or caused by, or causes. And so that's how you build dependencies. And so by choosing the various options there, Matrix will create those line dependencies. Now, we don't enforce dependencies. That's a very different issue. I think there's, some software that goes in and does that for you, but Matrix is not intended for that. Matrix is at the high level on building those Gantt charts for you. How do you differentiate between personal project and work project? That's a fantastic question. So Matrix actually doesn't do that automatically, but one of the things you can do for every single one of those your projects is actually go to the project details here. Now in the project details, there's two things you can do. One, you can create what's called project tags. So if you go to project tags here, you can add a tag. So you can add a tag called personal, right? Or you can add a tag called work. Now then you can have the different types of tags, and then when you filter your projects, you can just filter for project of specific tags. Or you can actually just change the name of your projects, right? So maybe you can do something like this, personal. And well, this is, clearly for just demo purpose, but here you can do that. And then when you search your project, you just do personal, and now you can see all your personal projects, or change to work and see all your work projects. So it's infinitely flexible from that perspective. It's just how you want to organize that information. The other thing too is actually you can star projects. And so starring is a special tag that puts the project at the very top. So, from your perspective, you might want to go and star your personal project and then a few keyword projects, and that's pretty much it. How do you conceptualize tags? So I'm not sure I understand what you mean by conceptualize, but when you create a tag, it's very flexible. There's only a few tags that we star is is a control tag in our system. When you star a tag, that's when it pops to the top of the list. But for all the other tags, you can go and you can create your own tag. So when you click on add here, you can click on this option and then you can build your own tags. And so, for example, work or personal or ideas or whatever, that's completely flexible. Oh, okay. So to tag something, you can see here in a project, I go down to project tag. Okay, when I select a project, I can click on project details. And then when I'm in project details, I go down here, click on project tags, and then add new tags. And then I can say something like that. So you see how I can actually just type the tag starred and then the tag work, and then I just press enter to add that tag. And so now I've created multiple tags with this project. For task, you can actually also create tags right here by clicking on this tag for an item, and you can add new tags. But in task, you can actually use the conversation and just use the hashtag. So for example, you can do a hashtag like that, and that'll create a tag for your item. Thank you for these questions. Is there any other questions? So as I mentioned, you'll get the recording for this webinar. If there's any other questions you have, feel free to reach out to us, helpdesk@affluence.com. And then I'm going to send that link to here in terms of support, in terms of the webinars where it's recorded and where we have it. And then the other thing is also download the desktop app. So you can go to affluence.com/downloads and be able to download the desktop app. I do recommend that, if you're you really want to get deep into Matrix, the desktop app just gives you access to the software, and it's very easy to work with. In terms of Matrix across different platforms, so if you use the newer version of our software, a lot of the apps are very similar. So the iPad app, the mobile app, the web app, the desktop app, the Teams app, Outlook app, they're all built on the same core. So that's very similar in functionality. How you access some of the features can be slightly different just because of how you interact with it. But in terms of the features itself, in terms of filtering and reports and different views, they're very, very similar. So with respect to the iPad app again, if you're using our latest mobile application, then it should be relatively similar in terms of functionality. Otherwise, you can always go to our web app on whatever mobile device that you're on, and you'll get a special version of our application, but for your mobile device. And so then the functionality is actually very similar. So if you go to affluence.com/PM, on your mobile device, then you'll get access to this application. Okay. Thank you all. Appreciate your time today. Bye-bye.